Hi, welcome to this episode of Open Conversations. My name is Sherman Rivers,
My name's Dominica Johnson.
and this is where spirituality meets practicality. In this episode, we are going to discuss awakening your divine masculine.
Yes, we are.
I guess the best way to go into that would be to kind of define what the divine masculine is.
Well, in my eyes, my view, divine masculine is it's housed in all of us, but it's energy that is outward flowing, whether it be action, whether it be um, building, creating things. Um, but that's a short version of what I think the divine masculine is.
Right.
How about you?
And I approach it, more of the masculine and feminine energy. We say, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and that's more or less approaching it from a spiritual perspective, but the meaning is much the same. It's masculine energy is I look at masculine energy as that penetrating energy, uh, that outward projected energy and I look at the feminine energy as receptive and the creative. It's kind of like the electrical outlets. You have
Hmm.
the masculine end and you have the feminine end, and these got to be put together in order to make a connection.
Right.
And so that's how I look at the divine masculine as that.
And we're going to discuss, because you can't discuss one without the other. There is a divine feminine and divine masculine. And like Sherman said, you cannot have one without the other. We all house both of those energies, and they need to be in balance, which is super important. Um, the main reason I wanted to talk about this topic is because it's something that I've been working on, I would say, the past couple of months. And I noticed some things in my life that were where I needed to actually really connect more with that side of my personality. And it's connected with a lot of old issues. It goes way back to growing up as a kid, relationships with men, growing up, being a young woman, and my relationships with men. And I noticed that there were things that were not balanced in the relationship, and uh, and I still view, and I'm still working on this, how I view men in certain ways. And I think society as a whole, we tend to view men in certain roles, and if they don't stand in that form, then they're not doing what they're supposed to be. Whether it's if they're not buff, if they're not making a certain amount of money, if they're not being the head of household and you know um, protecting their families like we think they should, then they're not considered real men. So I've had to look at a lot of areas in my life where I hold a shadow view of what the divine masculine should be. And that's something that I've actually started to really heal.
Right. And one of the things for me is the other side of that coin is going if you looked at the masculine as the right side and the feminine as the left side, it's going a little too far to the right, you know,
Yeah.
and overdoing that, and there's always reasons behind that psychologically why somebody
Hmm.
would do something like that. But for me, it manifested in a way that I actively attempted to avoid doing that, to avoid coming off as too strong, too masculine, too here I am 6'2", 235 pounds, and I'm very sensitive about the energy that I project and the way others perceive me. And I can tell, you can tell when you walk in a room and you frighten people, or some people get off on that high, you know, but that was never me. And then there's also the other side of it where we look at females who display certain tendencies that other people have classified as masculine tendencies without understanding that those tendencies should be present in both sexes.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately start to
Label them.
perceive this woman as something other than what she really is, just
Right.
because she happens to have an inner strength
Right.
inside of her. So when you watch us have this conversation, think about some of the things in your life, some of the instances where that either the manifestation of that energy has been a problem, or the lack of manifestation of that energy has been a problem. You know, it can work both ways.
Right.
It's
Right.
seesaw.
Right. Well, there are some characteristics that are for the divine masculine that are positive traits, positive qualities. When you are in balance and you are working with your divine masculine, logic comes easily to you. Reason, you take action on ideas and goals. You are firm. You actually have strong boundaries. And like I was telling Sherman before we started filming, barriers aren't boundaries. You want to have strong boundaries, but you don't want them to be so rigid that they are barriers and don't allow you to shift gears when you need to, or change your viewpoint. Also, survival and being in touch with your warrior. And being a warrior doesn't mean going out killing and fighting people. It just means that you stand your ground and you protect what you what's right, who you love, and what you stand for. Um, Also, being strong and adventurous. So those are some of the positive qualities and traits of being in tune and in touch with your divine masculine.
It's interesting because when you think about that term, what words that come along with it often are, like you said, warrior, also king. You know, so we start to think leadership traits. But every good king, every good leader is balanced. That energy is balanced. He's
Right.
strong. He's very in touch with that
Right.
that masculine energy. Yet there's that balance there. Like you said before, we kind of can't talk about one without talking about the other.
Right.
But more specifically, if we're talking about masculine energy and being in touch with that, awakening that, you know, what someone who is struggling in that area, you know, they struggle with basic things like becoming assertive, or you know, or um, actually holding those boundaries. You know, we say we have a boundary, but what happens when you have a boundary violation, you have to respond to that in a certain way. And a lot of that is sometimes you have to be a warrior when you respond to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can be a gentle warrior. It doesn't have to be aggressive. And so, yeah, absolutely standing up and standing in your truth.
But if somebody was completely off balance and they wanted to, what are some tips, tricks, ideas, thoughts, uh, ways of thinking that might help somebody awaken that masculine energy?
Well, I think first off, you have to look at why you feel the way you do and take ownership of why. And you take responsibility for your part of it. You know, that's the first thing you need to do is be aware. But you have to also go back to, and I'm looking at a website, and we'll discuss the website where you can go and look at some of this information too as well. But deconstructing some of your past conditioning, that's one thing you have to look at too. Go all the way back to, if it's men in your lives that you had, say you had a father that was abusive, or men that cheated on you or abandoned you, you're going to have some issues with trust. You're going to have issues with how you look and perceive. So that takes inward. You have to go within and look at why you feel that way. So you got to deconstruct first, and then you move on to taken action on some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So action is the key word when it comes to divine masculine energy. You want to take action. Don't just think about it, but act on it. Um, Take movement, even if it's a small step every day, even if it's just picking up the phone and calling to check on a friend that you hadn't checked on in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Take more initiative and be more, motivated and ambitious. So that's one way. Um, we talked about, I think it was, I talked about, I'm fucking up today.
So um, I think you want to keep going, or you want to send it back to me, and then I'll.
I can keep going.
Okay.
I was talking about earlier about relationships with men because that's one of the big reasons why a lot of women, and not just women, but men as well, have an imbalance in the divine masculine or that ability to take movement.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
That is involved with the divine masculine too, and not being as active or taking initiative when you should, because you tend to be, you're looking at the future and you're thinking, okay, you're overwhelmed, either you think you're going to fail and you don't put the effort in, and you procrastinate and you not do
You
things.
know what that sounds like to me? Is it sounds like um, is on the masculine end, when you're injecting, you're it's an aggressive type of thing. On the feminine side, you're receptive, and it almost sounds like what that person is going through is that they're allowing things to happen to them rather than happening to things.
Right.
So it's the type of paralysis that
Right.
they start to analyze their future, and then it's whatever happens, and it just starts happening to them,
Right.
and they're in a feminine state. They're open to whatever happens. Like that's when you start saying things like whatever it'll be will be, or que sera, or if it's meant to be, it'll happen.
Right.
Rather than
Making
taking
it happen.
actionable steps to make that thing
Right.
happen.
Right. Right. You're right. Also, being confident is another way that you can strengthen your connection to your divine masculine and activate it that way. Um, Getting connected with your divine father. We all have one. We all have different archetypes that we house, and your father within
Mhm.
can be one of your strongest allies if you allow it to be. And it's just a matter of meditating and connecting and seeing what that uh, part of you says
Mm.
about whatever issues you're having in your
Mm.
life. Instead of going to an actual person, you could actually tune in to the divine father and connect that way. um, but those are just a few of the things.
Mm.
Another one is connecting with a person that, because I can't say that I have a man in my life, like growing up, that I admired to the point that I looked at him, not someone in my physical
Mm-hmm.
world, that I could look at and just go, wow, I really, respect him. And that's bad to say, but I just don't have that.
Yeah. Almost like a role model.
Right. I'd never had a male role model
Mm-hmm.
in my physical life that I could say that about.
And it's wow. You would think if there wasn't one in the family, there's one in the community
Right,
somewhere.
right, right. Yeah,
Somebody in the community, or somebody in school, a teacher, or
right.
a
And this is
principal or
growing
something.
up. Now, of course, I've had, you know, I've respected some leaders,
Later on,
yeah, in my adult life. Um,
but in their capacity.
but just in their
Just in their
capacity, and
capacity.
that's
Not
all I had to go from,
right. Right.
what they showed to the world.
Right.
But my thing has always been, who are they behind closed doors?
Right.
And
That's
you
what
never
yeah.
get a full view of a person until you till you live with them, or you see different
So
aspects of them
basically,
in different
lack of a
moments.
male role model on an intimate level.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah,
family.
Right.
somebody close to you, somebody you
Hmm.
spend time with, someone who's around.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that plays big in how you view and how things flow with your feminine and masculine energies in,
Hmm.
in life. Sometimes you'll tend to see that things ebb and flow, that, you may have moments where you're pushing and you're hardcore and you're getting stuff done, and then you may have those moments where things are just, you pull back and you're just like whatever.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think to be balanced in your life, you'll see that be more balanced as well. It won't be just highs and lows,
Right.
because that's what I've seen in my life. And I can tell those moments where I was really connected to my divine masculine more so
Hmm.
than the feminine,
Right.
you know. And so,
And if you're watching this and that doesn't resonate with you, and there's a reason for that, because what could resonate with you is the opposite of that. Sometimes
mhm,
there's a masculine energy that's so dominant, so domineering
right.
that it has to do with self-esteem in
Hmm.
the way that you see yourself,
Hmm.
and it works on both levels,
It
either lack
does.
of or an
Or too much of,
overabundance of.
right.
That's like Alexander the Great. He wanted his father dead because there was nothing left for him to he couldn't measure up to there was nothing left for him to
Expectations.
conquer. His father
Yeah.
had already conquered most
Right.
of the known world. And sometimes we have that type of issue
Right.
where there's a male figure that you don't feel like you're adding up to, or you're mounting up to, or you can't amount up to.
Right.
And that all goes back to an internal thing. Like you said
It
earlier, it's
does.
how you look at yourself, how you
Yep.
perceive yourself.
Absolutely.
Self-esteem. Do you have self-esteem, or do you have them esteem? Is your self-esteem, your self-image based on you,
Hmm.
or how you feel others perceive you?
Hmm.
Are you living your life for everyone else, or are you living your life for yourself?
Right.
And that's going to have a huge impact on your ability to set your feet, and
Hmm.
establish yourself, plant your feet,
Right.
and awaken
Absolutely.
that energy.
Absolutely. And that's interesting. As you were speaking, it took me back to being younger. And my father, he was a great provider, but he wasn't the nicest person.
Mm.
He was very, he wanted you to fear him. And I don't parent like that.
Hmm.
So you want your kids to respect you,
Right.
but they shouldn't have to fear you to respect you.
And
And I'm sure it came from him growing up that way as well.
hmm.
They parent how they were parented. So um, fear, a lot of that is involved when I think about divine masculine, and I tend to stay away from exerting certain characteristics because I don't want to be like him.
Right. Right.
And you're
I get it.
stifling, you know what I'm saying?
I get
So
it. I get it.
there's so much involved when it comes to this. It's a topic that is so in depth, and you learn so much about yourself just by reading um, some great websites, good information, good books. I don't have any books that I can actually recommend this time, but there there's one website that's awesome, and there's a podcast by another young lady that I would highly recommend because she speaks so well about and so clearly breaks things down that you can clear some things up in your life.
Really.
Oh yeah,
I think that it's a lot of that's cultural.
I think so too.
With the fear,
Yeah,
and even the way we use word, the fear, like fear, like as a means of control,
yeah,
and people don't understand that. I do believe that fear breeds respect, and respect is what the parents are after. But I think that fear has to come from, one, knowledge of consequences, um, and two, the sense that something's not right or abnormal. And what I
hmm,
mean by that is, like, younger children don't reason as the same as we are when we're
right,
older. So I believe that fear can save their lives.
hmm,
But that fear comes from not because they're afraid of you and you act like that all the time, but if they heard something in your voice that's not normal,
right,
like they're going to a hot stove and they can almost hear that through your
hmm,
voice and it scared them,
right,
and that might save their life. But it's something totally different. It's the fear created by something being out of order.
Mhm.
or not normal, not fear created by that's the status quo and this is how it always is.
Mhm.
Dad is always grumpy. Dad is always mean. Dad is always, you know, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that over time we kind of like just muddled that up, and
Yeah.
you
There's a
know,
lot of darker aspects to the divine masculine, which I think have gotten a bad rap.
mm,
It's made divine masculine have a bad rap over the years, and everybody wants to talk about, oh, connecting with the goddess within and the divine feminine. No, you need a balance.
mm,
We all need a balance of both. We both house them already, so it's just a matter of knowing, being a good receiver and being a giver. And you can be a strong giver, a tender giver, and you can be a powerful receiver,
mm.
um, in both rights. So,
Just so often that in both sexes,
mhm,
that masculine quality is villainized,
it
especially
is.
nowadays when you look at the political landscape,
Hmm.
um, the social landscape. You know,
Yeah,
it's just been twisted, so much so that people are interpret the presence of it as hostile,
right.
and the lack of it as showing making you a better person, a bigger person.
Hmm.
How little of a masculine trait can you show? And that qualifies
As
you as
if
a
that,
more good person.
right. And it's wrong. It is
Right.
wrong, but it's society's standard.
Hmm.
That is, it's a cultural and a societal thing. Um,
You know what I find even more interesting? It just popped into my head when you were talking, though, is that the traditional view of God
hmm.
was a male, and if you notice that sometimes people, because of something destructive in their past or of negative experiences with that, judgment, different
Hmm.
things, they move away from that, and they push it away entirely. Mother Earth, they become and they actually start to think that anything spiritual is feminine.
Mm.
When if I was
Yeah,
religious, it's masculine,
right.
dominating, controlling. But if I'm spiritual, it's all
It's
feminine,
no,
and it's all just everything's great.
absolutely not.
And that energy and that you can't go through. You have to have that
You
balance.
have it. There is. It's in nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's in nature. You look at trees, leaves. You look at the stems and roots.
Mm-hmm.
It's all feminine and masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
So in everything in nature, just as we are, there's balance,
Right.
and there's both.
Right. And for me, I think it's key. And you'll hear me say this a lot, often, is that as we discussed, self acceptance is huge, and that's the foundation. That's where we begin. Either seeing ourselves as we are,
Hmm.
both the good and the bad, and
Accepting it.
accepting it as that's where we are, that's who we are,
Yeah.
and then looking to improve going
Right.
forward from there. But taking responsibility
Absolutely.
for that and respecting the free will of others. That's another thing with these with boundaries and that. If you in the cases where masculine energy becomes a bad thing,
Hmm.
it's usually because it's reaching out and it's penetrating, but it's
Hmm.
usually because it's penetrating something that it shouldn't be penetrating.
Hmm.
It's exceeded those boundaries,
Right.
and you can actually start to violate other people's boundaries, and that's when it becomes a negative thing.
Right.
But if up until the point where it hits your boundaries, that force field, it's a positive thing.
Right.
It's just beyond that. You have to be very careful of how you
Hmm.
utilize that energy. You know, so those three things are huge. Self acceptance, self responsibility, respect for free will. But going back to the beginning, um, in that self acceptance, and then from there, really realizing where you're at and moving into taking responsibility.
Hmm.
What are some of the telltale signs that have happened to you or that you've seen happen that if somebody watching this right now could maybe notice in their own life to realize that they need to awaken that energy? Um, some things that some events that may happen that kind of trigger that. Can you think of any
Trigger needing to,
trigger
well,
the understanding or knowing? Oh, wait, if this is happening to me, I probably need to.
Well, I can only tell you from my experience
Mm-hmm.
what's going on with me. When you know there are things that you are highly motivated to do and you just cannot take action, that's your there's a disconnect, or there's some type of obstacle that's clouding your divine masculine energy, and you've got to figure out what that is. So it's a matter of, you know, you got to do some inward work. So I can't tell you what exactly you can do because it can be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But that's just one instance. But when you're not able to take action, you're not, like I said, procrastination, um, not defending yourself, not standing up
I
for
was about to
yourself,
say that.
um, you know, the, that is big. Feeling powerless, as if you can't take care of yourself, you can't do anything, and
Mm-hmm.
that someone else has all the power.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to step into your power, and that's when it's time for you to work on your divine masculine
Yep.
energy.
One for me is one telltale sign that I've experienced personally is after the fact information. After something's taken place and leaving that situation, it's over, and then going into that woulda, coulda, shoulda mode. Why
Hmm.
didn't I say this? I should have said that. Well, why didn't I say that? Because I wasn't assertive.
But were you thinking about it at the time
I
and
what
wanted to,
I just allowed things to
but you
take their
just
course,
let
and
it?
I kept my
Okay,
mouth shut for
okay,
whatever
to keep
reason.
the peace or
Correct.
to.
And then later on, I felt violated later
Mm,
because it's like, you know what?
yeah,
I should have just went ahead and said this.
exactly.
I should have just went ahead and said that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And we as like people in relationships, or we as people, just relationships in general, you would have better relationships if you were
Mm-hmm.
able to stand in your truth,
Mm-hmm.
because you could stand in your truth without being mean, hateful,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still taking ownership, and you're getting what you need.
Right.
So yeah, I think we all have better relationships if we were able to be that way. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
serious.
It's
Hmm.
and sometimes what it seems kind of painful in the moment is helpful
Uh,
in the long term. You
exactly,
know. It,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So I hope that it will be your goal to tap into your divine masculine, and heal some of the issues and things surrounding why your divine masculine is not as strong as it should be, because I am. I'm on the road to recovery. I have already stepped into a lot of my power, and it's amazing to see things unfold and how situations are brought to you.
Mm-hmm.
Different situations, not you're not repeating those old habits, because you've learned from those things,
Right.
and the universe brings in new things that are healthy and healing for you. So.
That's it. That's it.
Mhm.
I personally, you know, have been working on. It sounds kind of odd, but when I said that I would kind of hold back and hold things in,
Mhm.
you know, part of that I honestly believe was a certain fear of success
Mm.
as well.
Mhm.
Um, you wouldn't think that if you think you want a thing, you wouldn't think that that would be an issue, but
Mm. Oh,
but
that's a lot. That's one of the number one reasons why people,
yeah,
it, they are stalled,
yeah,
because they fear the success
right.
that will actually come.
Uh-huh. And we tend to we go into an analysis mode, and
Yeah.
then we go into a mode where we want to our divine feminine is in full play. We start being creative. We're open to information. We're receiving information. We're
Mhm.
taking it in, but we're not doing anything. We're just learning more and analyzing.
Sitting
So,
on it. Yep.
and it was a wake up call for me when I really realized that to start taking action,
Right.
and start moving forward and start being a little more aggressive about things and utilizing what I've received,
Mhm.
redirecting that energy. So,
And I can say I've learned some of that from you. You've actually inspired me in a couple of different ways to, take action.
Take action.
And it's stuff that I know.
Right.
It's just with life circumstances, that can paralyze you too.
Yeah.
You can get caught up in what's going on around you and completely forget about what's important, your journey, and other things that you need to contribute. So yeah.
So and what happens is you become receptive,
Yeah.
and you take it in and you redirect it
Right.
and you reposition it and you put it somewhere else
And
and
you
you
sit
handle
on
it.
it, and
You
yes,
just handling everything that's
yes,
coming at you.
and you
That's
get more and
handling.
more frustrated.
Right. Because it's like, what am I in control of, or what am I
Right.
doing other than blocking and
Exactly.
playing defense, and and just taking what's given.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Great conversation.
Well, the website that I wanted to let everybody know, there's her name is, well, she calls herself Lone Wolf, and it's at www.lonewolf LONEWOLF.com. So visit her site. She has a wealth of information that you can go in, and it would be a great start to see some of the things that you could do to improve upon with connecting with divine masculine, and just seeing where you may have some imbalances and why those imbalances occur in that area.
LoneWolf.com.
Mm-hmm.
How did she get that domain name?
I don't know, but I like it.
LoneWolf.com. So like that would have been hard to get a hold of.
She's probably had it for a while.
All right, so we're gonna leave you with this. When we talk, we talk mostly from our own personal experience.
Exactly.
Everything beyond that is conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a million different concepts.
And there's so much more to this topic.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the tip of it.
That's it. And there's so many different thoughts and so many different concepts and everything, and so many different life experiences. So what I would love is to know some of the things that you've gone through, or some things that you're going through right now, or some of the ways that you've handled things. What have you done to manifest and to awaken that divine masculine? And if you haven't, what are some of the things that we've said during this that have helped you pick up on some things that you might want to address?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We'd love to hear. Tell us all your stories. So if you're watching the video, you could subscribe and leave us messages about all of that good stuff below. And if you're listening on podcasts, leave us a 5-star review.
Absolutely.
And tell your friends about us.
Right. And if you like it, share it. That's it.
Absolutely.
Tell your friends, share it.
Yes.
And send us some feedback too. We want to know about some. If you've seen other folks out there doing something similar to what we're doing and having these same types of conversations, send a link to us. Put it in the comment section. We'd love to kind of grow that community and participate and interact with that community as well. So.
All right. So I guess we're signing off.
That's it. But that concludes this episode of Open Conversations, where spirituality meets practicality.
You say that so well.
Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.